Who is the most underrated actor of all time?
It's Dolph Lundgren.
Correct. Why?
Well, because of his spiky hair, and his ice-cold demeanor, and his big muscles.
Absolutely.
I must break you.
The guilty will be punished. My name is Sergeant Andrew Scott.
Come on, guys, don't do this. If I don't get breakfast, I get real grumpy. I don't think you like me grumpy.
And you go in pieces, asshole.
Let's kick some ass.
Hello and welcome back to I Must Break, this podcast, the fan podcast looking at the cinematic career of action legend Dolph Lundgren. On today's episode, we're getting in the festive Christmas spirit and discussing one of Dolph's more recent efforts, Pups Alone. In this family-friendly Christmas comedy, Dolph plays Victor Von Manure. Yes, you heard that name right. An inventor working for a pet supply conglomerate who hires two bumbling thieves to steal his neighbor's new high-tech invention just before the holidays. Yet Victor and the thieves get much more than they bargained for when they discover that the neighborhood dogs have banded together to protect their homes.
Well, here we are. What do you think?
It has potential.
Yeah. What do you think, Charlie?
This is gonna be one rough Christmas.
Better step in line, mutt. Pups that don't last very long around here.
You must be Robert. I'm Holly.
Looks like our neighbors are getting cozy. Too cozy.
Do you think she's married? You should ask her out.
I'm Victor, the engineer pet tech assigned to a big secret project. How about you and I give the old man a hand? Let's get this aside. What do we have here?
Oh, it's just a prototype and not a very good one. Hopefully, when it's all done, it will decipher a dog's thoughts into words.
A canine translator. That's brilliant.
Precisely.
Don't get too settled. We have vacation to think about.
Vacation?
Big Bear Ski Lodge, yearly company shindig. Everyone's going.
Why are you dressed like Santa Claus, huh?
Can't afford to look stupid. Need all of his research to check everywhere.
Toilets?
Everywhere!
Let's get the prototype first, and then we hit the rest of these godforsaken houses.
Oh no.
Heavy. Bad guys are coming tonight.
I have a plan that can help everyone, but we need to work together and put our differences aside.
That's it.
Hey! Oh, my werewolves!
Done an amazing job with Jenna. She's incredible.
She is. She's everything to me.
You guys are the worst bad guys ever.
Is that all you got, Pup?
I'm your host, Sean, and joining me to chat this one today is Katie Geilenkirchen, one of the hosts of the One More Round podcast. Katie, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
I know.
Like a Dolph movie.
Well, especially this one. I think if I remember right how it came around, you came to me and you said, "Hey, have you heard of this movie Pups Alone? Because I really want to chat about it." And I said, "Oh, okay, fine. I guess that's basically how it went down, right?"
Absolutely. One of my favorite movie genres is cheesy kids movies. That's if nobody can spot the sarcasm there. I am actually childless, so I'm not a fan of the kid movie, generally speaking. But Dolph, Christmas, dogs. I mean, what could go wrong?
Well, there you go. Yeah. Well, and actually, before we start talking about the film, I wanted to know a little bit about your show because, okay, so you're on the One More Round podcast. I think it's safe to say you're a pretty big Sylvester Stallone fan, especially Rocky and Rambo. Is that right?
Yes. I think you guessed correctly by the name of my dogs. Is one of the big giveaways there. I have 2 dogs, and they are named Rambo and Balboa. So if that gives you any inclination of how big of a Stallone fan I am.
Well, and I mean, and that was actually one of the reasons, Katie, when we got in contact. I know we kind of kicked around a number of Dolph films because I'm in that recent period or so within the past 10 years. And, there's quite a few films that we have to cover. Some are better than others, I will admit. But we kicked around some ideas of films. And I know that you had mentioned that you were a really big dog person. So I kind of thought, wait a minute here. Okay, Dolph did this movie, Pups Alone. It's a Christmas movie. We're approaching the holidays. I wonder if Katie might be willing to discuss this one. And you graciously jumped on board with it. Is it safe to say, was it the fact that it was, okay, not only Ivan Drago, but in a movie with a bunch of cute mutts? Was that kind of why you agreed to this? Yeah,
I mean, I would watch Dolph Lundgren movies, even if there wasn't dogs, but that was definitely a help. And you're right, because we're approaching Christmas time. And then I had looked it up, and I also thought, I mean, there's a pretty stellar cast actually in this movie, including Danny. I'm a big fan of Danny Trejo, and he voices the bulldog. So I thought, I mean, it has to be pretty decent at least. So yeah, I was on board.
Well, and actually, okay, so you mentioned Stallone, obviously, but I'm curious, what about Dolph Lundgren? I always like to ask all the guests, okay, we all know where he ranks for me in my pantheon of action heroes, but where does he rank for you? I'm curious, what films of his have you seen? And, how does he compare to Mr. Stallone and Van Damme and all those guys for you? That's an interesting question, and my answer might be a little surprising considering that I'm on a show that is a part of the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network. I'm actually not a huge action movie person, but I very much like some of the men that are in them. I'm a woman, and I first fell in love with Dolph, obviously, in Rocky IV. I just remember being a child watching that, like on a VHS recorded from TV version probably, and thinking, I don't think I'm supposed to like this Russian guy, but I do. I mean, me as like a 5-year-old watching this. And so then I've always kind of liked him, and I knew that he was in, I don't know what you would call it, B-level celebrity. I'm not really sure, but he's not like great action movies is pretty apt,
yeah. So I would say Arnold and Sly, maybe a few others are kind of at that top level, and then there's like the Jean-Claudes, and then Dolph is just maybe like a touch below that. So I'm a fan of Jean-Claude. I'm a fan of Dolph. I'm a fan of Stallone. I think that they're interesting to look at. And back in the day, it was an art form. They used their bodies as art forms, before there was CGI to, paint on muscles, so to speak. So I'm impressed by it, the level of commitment and dedication, with those action stars. And then the more I got to know, particularly Dolph and Stallone, they're very intelligent people, which is surprising to those who it's probably surprising to a lot of people that don't know a lot about them. So I have more respect for them, just knowing that there's something behind the muscles. There's a ton that I love about, Sylvester Stallone. I could go on and on and on, but, with Dolph Lundgren, then really seeing him in Creed 2, I was just blown away. I thought that movie should have been called The Dragos. Yeah, so it's just further cemented him in my memory. How about you? How did you become a Dolph fan of all of the selections that you could have?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've talked about this on the show a couple of times. Actually, not that often, but I mean, you brought up a couple of interesting points that I want to get to before we really dive into the film. But you're exactly right. I've said this on the show before, but back in the day, I realize I sound like a boomer saying that.
I know, me too. I'm not, I promise.
No, but what's interesting is, yeah, you're exactly right. Before Marvel, okay, and Disney took over the box office as we know it, these were our superheroes. Okay, Dolph and Arnold and Van Damme and Stallone. I mean, these were these guys. I think it was on a previous episode a number of years ago, but one of my guests referred to them as rarefied beings. Okay, I mean, these were our superheroes, and it's just kind of interesting how when the superheroes finally came in and started getting their own films, it was pushing these guys, okay, who actually had the physiques and not the padded costumes and whatnot, kind of pushed them out. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, you're exactly right. And I'm right there with you. I mean, obviously I am a little biased toward, considering the nature of the show, obviously. But, my favorite Rocky film of all of them was easily Rocky IV. And a lot of that was because of Dolph's portrayal as Drago. Okay. And yeah, I don't know about you, but I know there's been talk. There's been some rumors. I am really, really hoping for a Drago spin-off movie. Or I've also heard rumors. Oh, and I think everybody wants it. And I know there's kind of some bad blood right now between the owners of Rocky and Stallone. And a lot of people are thinking, well, Dolph shouldn't do it if Stallone isn't supportive of it. But I'm thinking to myself, like, come on, that could be a really fantastic opportunity for Mr. Lundgren. And he's not getting any younger. Let's be honest. He's not getting any younger. So I feel like Stallone is at a point in his career where he's doing just fine. And I know that Dolph is probably doing just fine as well. But I mean, this could really, really open some more doors for Mr. Lundgren, I think. So hopefully they're able to kind of figure that out and get the ball rolling on that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that people, like you said, people are eager for it, especially, it's like kind of like strike while the iron is hot, so to speak, a little bit. And yeah, he is not getting any younger, is he? No. Well, if we look at this particular film, I mean, yeah, we can call this our Christmas episode. So congratulations, Katie, you're on the first the first ever Christmas episode of the show. I don't know if you're wearing a Christmas sweater or kicking back some eggnog or not. I have red on. Does that count?
So yeah, no, that counts perfectly. Well, I mean, if we look at this particular film, I'll give you a little bit of background on it. To be honest, I didn't even think when I first started the show up, I didn't even think that I would be covering this film. To be perfectly honest, I really didn't even think it was going to see the light of day. Okay. I think I kind of directed you to this before we started chatting, but this movie was actually filmed in 2017. And it was one of those films that I remember when it was being filmed, I was kind of in disbelief, like, what? Like, Dolph is really doing this? Oh, okay. Because it just looks and feels like one of those Hallmark Channel Christmas movies. You know what I mean? Exactly. It has that. Yeah. It has that same kind of cheap direct-to-video quality and texture about it. And so I was thinking, okay, in my mind, I was thinking, well, eventually we're going to see it dumped on Hallmark. Years went around. It was not. Okay. It was still kind of sitting there in post-production. I was able to speak with the director of this film, Alex Merkin, actually a couple of times. He directed one film with Lundgren called Altitude, and then obviously this film. And I spoke to them a couple times to the podcast and was like, dude, you filmed this movie in 2017. It's not out yet. It finally did get released last year in November 2021. And I asked him what was the holdup for it. And his response in so many, there were a number of reasons, but one of the things he said is that they had spent all this time trying to line up the voice casts for all of the dogs in the movie. And that could very well be true. However, I don't know about you, but I think it's also clear that they didn't know how to edit this movie together and make a coherent product. There are at least 3 different storylines going on in this movie. This film is crazy.
I mean, it's sort of like that game or that activity. It's like playing telephone, but with the script. It's like, let's everybody start, or I'm going to start with my notebook. write a piece of the story, pass it along to the next person. They're going to write a piece of the story. And it very much is a discombobulated series of scenes. And it was really long.
Yeah. You're exactly right. This film, I mean, when you look at it at the conceit, at the general conceit, it's basically Home Alone, but with dogs. Okay. Oh, the hilarity, I think we can say. But this should easily be an 85-minute movie, in and out. And this film is an hour and 47 minutes. They could have easily cut 20 minutes from this film, but there are scenes. I wrote a few of these down. I don't know if you noticed them or not, but there are so many scenes in this film that just go on and on and on. You can feel that the actors were all improving, and maybe Alex Merkin wasn't yelling cut. But I mean, it is just it's kind of excruciating in some parts.
Yeah, I felt that way in several places as well. I probably couldn't name the scene. I mean, most of them really. And it's like they tried to fit way too many, of your standard Christmas movie storylines, or just movies. It's like the dead mom raising the kid, the dad's raising the kid alone, getting the, single neighbor lady together with the dad, and then their respective dogs are together again too. And,
and then you have a company retreat.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah. So, and then there's the mailman trope with dogs, the estranged grandpa. What did that have to do with literally anything? And then reuniting a lost dog and its owner, and the happy ever after Christmas. It was just like, wow, that's a lot of themes.
That is a lot. No, yeah, that you're exactly right. I mean, you said a lot there. That is so much to put into what is essentially a Hallmark Christmas movie. I mean, man, yeah. I actually wrote these down. I'm glad that you brought them up, but I mean, we're kind of going all over the place here, but I mean, look, there are so many pointless scenes that just go on and on and on. We're going to get into Dolph here in a minute, because obviously I'm a little biased about him, but I think he is without a doubt the best part about this movie. Would you agree?
At first I was like, oh, I don't know. Yes, I would say Danny Trejo also, just because I'm a little biased. I do love Danny Trejo, and his voice is Vinny, but again, that's a typical trope of, the dogs being very stereotypical, like the voices that matches the breed. Like the Basset Hound was like a slow speaking old Southern person. And you know what I mean? Like the Bulldog is Danny Trejo, and the Chihuahua, Rob Schneider, is the Chihuahua, like using sort of like a Cholo voice, it's just very typical stereotypes, I guess.
Dog father? You really call yourself that?
I don't. They do. Meet my crew. Keywood. My crew.
That's 2 words.
Jose, Bernard, Dozer, Tiny, and right there, my number 1 Dane, Gidget. Keep your paws off her.
Hola, perro. Is you a city mat?
Not anymore, apparently.
These are our crew, amigo. The dog fellas. Yeah. Oh, lo siento. Sorry, Gage. I apologize. I meant not the dog fellas, dog people. Dog friends.
Jose.
You like Christmas time, City Mat? Of course you do. Tell me you do.
Enough. No more Christmas talk.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I won't make a mistake again. Thank you for correcting me. I apologize with all my heart.
Hey, everyone home, now.
Adios, amigo. But we will meet again. Anytime food gets thrown out of a restaurant on a Tuesday, I'll be there.
Okay, sure.
Anytime a half-eaten hamburger gets thrown out the station wagon window, I'll meet you there. Hopefully after I've finished the hamburger, and you have to lick the wrapper.
Okay.
Enough!
Adios, amigo.
By the way, the dog father goes where the dog father goes. Su casa es mi casa. Capiche?
See you around.
Apologies. What Vinny P says usually goes. He's okay sometimes, but not really.
Yeah, he seems a little...
I smell chili. Southern bean chili.
Sheesh, this is gonna be one rough Christmas.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, so, I mean, before we get to the dogs, I mean, I just want to say there are so many scenes that just go on and on and on, and you're just wondering, like, wow, this thing sat in post-production for over 4 years. and they decided to keep this in. So, I mean, you just said it. The main character of the film, Robert, who we'll be getting to here in a minute, he is the estranged grandfather of the family. And we see Charlie the dog trying to write him letters, but they never get sent. Why this estranged grandfather element is in the film, I guess, like you said, it's a trope of other holiday movies, so they decided to put that in as well. There's another scene where the two bumbling thieves are robbing an old blind woman. That scene goes on forever. And then, you said the mailmen. Like, I understand, like, okay, I get what they're doing here. Okay. Mailmen are afraid of dogs. I get it. But there are so many scenes of the rookie mailman who's trying to avoid the dogs. And I guess the writers of this think that we are supposed to laugh that he is wrapping himself up in bubble wrap, trying to deliver a package. It gets to a point where it's kind of like, what are we doing here? Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Well, so I was going to ask you how old your kids are and what they thought of it, because I did think, I was like, well, maybe this is like a cute thing for kids and like elderly people. Like, that's sort of a type of comedy and movie that they would think is hilarious. I don't know. But what did your kids think?
Well, that was actually going to be my recommendation at the end. My kids got bored.
Really? How old are they? How old are your kids?
8 and 6.
Okay.
8 and 6. Actually going to be 9 here as of this recording. Going to be 9 and 7 here in a month, and they got bored with it. And I think what it comes down to be perfectly honest, is, I mean, look, this film is working with a low budget, so we can't knock it entirely. But it just gets really, really old. Pretty much watching dogs stare at each other while silly voices are in the background narrating. Now, obviously, this film did not have the budget, nor did it really want to employ some CGI to kind of make their mouths move. I get it. But after a while, there's only so much you can do with that where you lose interest. Now, the animals in this movie were trained wonderfully. Whatever dog wranglers were on set, working with these animals, I can only imagine the trials of that. And I remember when I spoke to Alex Merkin, he admitted, he was once told, what was it he told me when I spoke to him? Working with kids and dogs are some of the most difficult things to do. And here it is in this film, he's working with them both. Having said that, though, it's just, I mean, did you feel that way at all? I mean, like I said, my kids they tuned out after 25 minutes. Because like I said, there's only so much you can do with dogs just kind of moving their head around, up and down, looking at each other, with a silly voice in the background,
Yeah, I mean, I was purposefully watching it because I knew I was going to be discussing it. So I'm
sorry.
I'm sorry. No, that's please. It wasn't that bad. I will say, my expectations were so low that I was like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I mean, they could have cut. Now, I will say a lot of times when I hear podcasts and they complain about the movie being long or something like that, I want to say on the record, I do not have a problem with movies that are long. And I guess long is relative, but 2+ hours or even, that's fine if the story warrants it and if it keeps your attention. But this, like you did say, I mean, it's almost like it sat there for so long and then they're like, we just have to release it and screw editing it at all. I mean, they just kind of, they could have cut so much and it would have been, I think it maybe would have played a little bit better. And I'm also very curious, you had mentioned the low budget. I don't know how low or what that entails, because there are a lot of famous people in this movie. Mm-hmm. So, and it's like, to do a movie like that, in my mind, it's like, well, they all needed a paycheck. But it sounds like they couldn't have even been paid very much if the budget was really low. How does that work?
Yeah. And this, surprisingly, I was actually gonna play a couple of the clips throughout our conversation, but this actually last year got, surprisingly, a theatrical premiere. Now, it did premiere on video on demand and on DVD, but it did get a premiere where many of the cast did show up, on a small little red carpet event. And so it's just kind of like wild, like, wow, Saban Entertainment, that's one of the distributors who ended up picking this up. They apparently saw value in this and enough to warrant a small red carpet premiere, which I find fascinating to an extent.
Yeah, I'm actually really shocked to hear that. And that a bunch of the stars cast whatnot showed up. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't want to like go out of order, but so some of the cast include, so the main character, Tyler, is like an unknown, but then we have, I mean, Eric Roberts is one of the humans in addition to Dolph Lundgren, Malcolm McDowell, Keith David. It was like, that made me smile, showing up as the bartender. And then the voice actors, you know, Jerry O'Connell plays the main dog, Charlie. Jennifer Love Hewitt, who's, you know, basically, she's like Hallmark royalty, I believe. I don't actually enjoy Hallmark movies, but that seems like her cup of tea. Danny Trejo, Rob Schneider. And then did you recognize the two bumbling idiots were almost like identical? It was like they tried to recreate Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern's characters from Home Alone.
Oh yeah.
Like they were, didn't you think that they were mimicking them? So like almost like word for word, not word for word, but Nicholas Turturro, who played Benny, it's like he was purposefully trying to be Joe Pesci.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And actually I had some thoughts that I wanted to get to regarding the, regarding, I guess if you want to call it, the final assault at the end where the dogs get revenge on these guys. I wanted to get your opinions on that. But okay, before we get to there, I mean, look, we already kind of talked about it. This particular film, yeah, it has so many different plot threads, okay, going throughout it that I wrote some of these down so just we can keep track of them. Okay. You have a widowed father. Okay. His daughter and their dog, Charlie, move towns and try to get reacclimated to their new neighborhood. The dad, his name is Robert. He's played by Tyler Hollinger, I think is how you say his name. He is this inventor for a pet company called Pet Tech. And apparently, this is interesting to me. Apparently Pet Tech they have all of their employees live in like this neighborhood compound. I don't know if some companies do that, but okay, that's interesting, I guess.
I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah. So, okay. We also have the other storyline. Two of his neighbors and colleagues. We have the attractive Holly, who Robert's daughter is immediately eager to set her dad up with, almost awkwardly so, I think. And then we have, Dolph Lundgren's character, Victor. Okay, so he's our main antagonist. He is a conniving employee of Pet Tech who's, I guess he's been with the company for over a decade, and he's been trying to move up the corporate ladder. And then he sees that Robert's latest invention is a canine translator, which is basically just the device from the movie Up. I thought that was, that was pretty funny, which Victor immediately wants for himself.
Well, and just while we're on this neighborhood and Victor finding out about that invention, apparently the house that Robert and his daughter Jenna move into with their dog Charlie, that is across the street from Victor's, apparently Victor used to live there. And the company, Pet Tech, like kicked him out to across the street for someone else to move into. I just thought that was really unnecessary too. Like the houses are almost identical. It's not like one of them is better than the other. It was silly, or I don't know. I just thought that was, again, something that could have been cut. What was your take on that?
That was my next point, which was it was amazing to me. So here's one of the multiple issues I have with this film, are pretty much the opening 20 minutes. Okay, the opening 20 minutes are so crazy, okay? So, for one, the film oddly starts with Robert and his daughter in their old home, okay? Now, we've seen these type of tropes before. You already mentioned it, okay? The widowed father who's moving with his kid, we will say, to a new home, okay? Any other movie, any other film would have started with them either A, in the moving truck on their way to the new destination, or the film would start with them, unpacking the moving truck and moving into their new home. Okay. I mean, we've seen this before. And so it's just so odd that it spends all this time in their old home for them to just suddenly get in this moving truck and then move. Okay, so that's time right there. And also what the film does is it uses these animated comic strip sequences to kind of help progress the narrative. Now, I'm an amateur illustrator myself, I'll admit. So on one hand, not anything amazing, but on one hand, I will say, okay, they look a little kind of cool. I mean, they do in a weird kind of way. They do kind of add a little bit of production value to the film to where you look at them and you're thinking, okay, that's kind of nice. But on the other hand, I mean, you just said it, so much exposition and information is provided through these still cartoon frames where I was like, what is happening? So in one of these stories, you just said it, is we find out, first of all, we find out that Robert's a widow. Okay, that I can go with that. But then it later goes on to show us background on Victor and some crazy incident that occurred with the CEO and an exploding toilet. It's like, and this is all done through these comic strip sequences here to the point. And again, you're barely 25 minutes into the film.
Yeah.
And you're wondering what is this?
Yeah, I noticed the exact same thing. It was and they even showed via this narrator and these book illustrations, were shown and told about how there were these two inventors. It's like Robert and his wife. They even show the wife and then she gets sick and die. I mean, it's like, why do we have to go into all of these? It was just way too much. Cause at first I was like, oh, this is cute. This will be decent. I mean, it was kind of a nice way of, transitioning, but there was too much. It was like if you have to explain the whole movie via this, then there's something wrong, I think. Yeah.
Let's talk real quick. I mean, about Dolph's character, Victor. Okay. Now I'm not even really going to go into his name. I think Victor Von Manure. Okay. Whatever. But okay. So yeah, he's the main antagonist. He's the one who, is extremely jealous of Robert and his inventions. He's the one who hires the two bumbling thieves to break into the home and steal these inventions and everything. I will say right now, in my opinion, I think that Dolph is easily the best thing about this movie. I have never, I know I've been doing the podcast for a while. I've seen all of his movies, many of them multiple times. I have never seen Dolph act at this level. I mean, yeah, you can say Universal Soldier when he was Andrew Scott, he was insane. But here, it's okay. First of all, you can tell he's having fun, but it's almost like he's channeling his inner Nicolas Cage. He is out of control in this movie.
Yeah, it's cartoonish. I agree that I was so glad to see that he didn't just phone it in.
No.
I will say, there were a few things that they pointed when we first meet his character. It's, they really tried to play up that he is this like big hulking man and is so strong with the moving boxes and shaking hands. But it seemed odd to me because he wasn't that he wasn't really built like he is in a lot of other movies.
Yeah.
He was just sort of like, I mean, he's a tall man, but he was just sort of like I don't know. I thought that was kind of strange because he wasn't that like built and like we normally see Dolph. He looked more like a normal, like cool, like, oh wow, look at the neighbor. I mean, he's very unique looking.
Yeah.
Dolph will turn.
He's not like he's Dwayne Johnson. I mean, right? I mean, yeah. I wasn't explaining it very well. And ordinarily, one of my favorite things about Dolph Lundgren is his hair. Not necessarily in Rocky IV, but like he has great hair. And I was like, there's something a little off. I just remember when we first meet him, I'm like, I don't know if this was around that, like his body didn't seem like it normally is. And I don't know when he got his hip surgery, if it was around this time or not. But that was one thing I noticed. But they always have him in interesting outfits. Yep.
And then his hair I was like, what's with his hair? It was like curly on the top.
It's perm.
And only later I about died because I couldn't. There's a scene later in the movie. This is the one thing I actually like laughed at like out loud. There's a scene later when they're at the ski lodge and he's in his room again in like a coordinated like sweatsuit. And he literally has those old-timey curlers in his hair. And I was like, that's why his hair looks weird. Oh, I literally laughed out loud. What did you think of his hair? Like, well, again, that was weird. Like, a character choice, but it was a funny moment to me, like one of the only like truly funny moments.
Well, it almost feels like it's maybe for like a different movie. I mean, you can tell that they're trying to do so much with this character here. Okay. I mean, there's a scene where he's polishing his trophy or whatever. And apparently he's also a talented painter. Okay. You know what I mean? So there's these little touches like that. He's wearing a sweater that has deer pooping on it for whatever reason. I don't know if you picked up on that little touch. I mean, so
I didn't. I just thought it was like a Christmas sweater. But everything in this movie is crammed in.
Yeah,
like literally every aspect about this movie seems like they crammed too much in.
Well, and so this all shifts to the two distinct narratives of the film, I think we can say. Okay, so I think we can kind of classify these into story one and story two. Story one is where all the pet tech employees are off on a company retreat at I guess it's like a ski resort lodge. Okay. And then story two, we have the subplot about the dogs. Okay. All of these animals are at home alone. Okay. And Charlie is getting acclimated to his new surroundings as well as the group of neighborhood dogs. Now, I wanted to look at story one real quick here. Okay. The film is called Pups Alone. So we'll get to the animals here in a minute, but I wanted to ask you about story thread number one. Now you're in the corporate world. Okay. I'm wondering, how often do these type of retreats happen, especially at like a ski resort lodge? And I guess my follow-up question is, Robert brings his kid with him. So is that doable as well?
So that's a good point. Now, there are these types of retreats do exist. The whole company, especially companies where there's employees from kind of all over, not necessarily which is a departure from this movie where they are all neighbors anyway. They see each other all day at home, at work, and now they're going to go on this retreat together. So what would never happen, so there are retreats that would be at a ski resort or, a beach resort or something like that, where everybody gets together once a year to either celebrate successes or whatnot. It would never be for Christmas, on Christmas. And it would not be it would maybe be bring your spouse, but it would not, it wouldn't be like bring your whole family. So
especially the scene where they're all, especially the scene.
No, that's it.
All eating dinner. I was going to get to that in a minute, but they're all eating dinner and the little girl is sitting there with them. And that's my thing that I struggled with. And I know, look, this is a dopey movie. Okay. That went, so, I shouldn't be looking at this much, but I don't know about you, but it was such a crazy juxtaposition that you have these two settings. You have everybody off at the ski lodge, and then it would intermittently go back home where all these animals are at home alone and their adventures with one another. These two settings, I guess, if you will, did not make sense to me really at all. They didn't gel with one another like I think they should.
Yeah, I don't know how. There has to be some reason to get the, adult humans or the humans out of the neighborhood, and then all the dogs can have their home alone moment, so to speak. But even the home alone moments, it's basically just Charlie. Like the other dogs are just kind of around from time to time. And I kept wondering, like, are they going to come help? And when is the bulldog? Because one of the things that we learn early on is that the bulldog is a bully, and there's an opportunity for him to kind of re-ingratiate himself, to the dogs in the neighborhood, et cetera. And he sort of, we do get that towards the end, but all of the pranks they go on forever and ever. Yeah. And it's basically just Charlie doing them. And every now and again, you'll see some of the other dogs doing something, but I just didn't think that all of the other dogs were really doing that much, or did I miss it?
No, look, I said that I would get to the final assault, and that's an excellent segue. So I wanted to get your take on that real quick. Okay. first of all, like we said, the dogs are all speaking with one another. So that this is where our voice cast comes in that you already mentioned earlier. Yet, like we talked about, it doesn't have the budget to kind of do the CGI to have some moving dog mouths. So instead, the dogs are just kind of staring at each other as the dubbing steps in to kind of progress these conversations. But where it gets interesting is, okay, so Benny and Lenny break into this house, okay, and the dogs all band together to fend them off using all of Robert's inventions. So again, it's pretty much Home Alone with dogs, but that conceit, those events really only take up about maybe 15 minutes of the movie. And so the traps, like you said, go on way too long. I mean, the traps are basically, if we just break them down, at least the ones that I remember, we have a flatulent dog. Okay, that joke goes on forever. We have a misplaced bowling ball. We have a machine that saran wraps one of the thieves. Why this thief doesn't just step off of the rotating pedestal and just keeps standing there as he's getting tied up is amazing to me. But so, okay.
Yeah.
Let me get you.
I mean, it was like Benny and Lenny had to try really hard to be the butt of these jokes. Meaning,
it's almost like they're purposely stepping into the trap.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to get your take because I did watch. It's interesting. It's kind of coincidental how this came about, but I did watch the original Home Alone with my kids again a couple weeks ago, and with those films, I mean, yes, they're ridiculous. We can say it. They're also 30 years old. But what's interesting about them is, okay, those burglars you do care about to an extent, and those traps in a really weird way kind of all make sense. You know what I mean? I mean, you kind of have to, it takes a bit of a leap of logic, okay, but they do kind of make sense. So I wanted to get your take. Why is it that a film like, and I guess, okay, it's not fair to compare a film that was written by John Hughes with a film that was directed by Alex Merkin, but I'm curious, why is it that it works in a film like Home Alone, and for this particular film, which is pretty much using the exact same setup and everything, only instead of a rambunctious, precocious kid, we have rambunctious, precocious dog. Why do you think that works in something like Home Alone? And here, you keep checking the clock. You keep pressing the pause button, figuring out how much time is left.
Wow. Very good question. I hadn't really thought, to be honest, like how to pinpoint it. It's really, I guess, just the quality of the pranks or it's a combination. It's just it's everything. I don't know. It's the story, it's the writing, it's the directing, it's the we don't care. We know it's coming. We don't really care. We're not curious to see what the next thing is. I think it's just a quality issue all around. What do you think?
I agree. I think it's a quality issue. Because you could argue and you could say, well, no, Pups Alone does spend the necessary amount of time introducing the two burglars like Home Alone did. But I don't know. I almost kind of wonder if it's because with Home Alone, you have so much time being spent with Macaulay Culkin, right? You know what I mean? So you kind of get attached to that character to where when he is setting up the traps, you're engaged and you're with it and you're invested, as opposed to this film, all this time is spent at the lodge. And then when it comes back to the dogs, you forget about those characters. You know what I mean? And then it bounces back and forth. I mean, I think that could be one reason. I don't know.
Yeah, I really wish I had a better answer for that, but it's just like everything is just lesser. Despite I think the casting is pretty good. I think everybody does an adequate job, an adequate or better job. It's just not set up well. It's budget, everything. Now, I'm so glad that you brought up the gadgets, the inventor portion of it. Now, was there a movie immediately when I saw all of that, them setting up and showing all of his inventions and stuff? There was a movie we're probably similar in age. Was there a movie from our childhood that you hearkened back to? I'm curious if we have the same. Did you think of anything? I immediately thought of one.
Well, I mean, you could argue and you could say some of those gadgets are similar to what Data concocted in The Goonies, I guess. Only, yeah, his were, he was more like a James Bond. Yeah, where he had them all kind of on his body.
That's a good one. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, no, what were you thinking of?
I was thinking Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Do you remember those movies?
Yes. Yeah, Rick
Moranis and...
Yeah, and I remember, yeah, if I remember correctly, in the opening scenes, it was like the dog's method of getting his breakfast and everything. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was just all of his inventions. And yeah, and then, thinking through all of the them jamming a bunch of themes in, I guess if I were to describe this movie to someone, I would say it's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids meets My Girl meets Home Alone meets 101 Dalmatians and on and on and on and on. I mean, it's sort of like they're just like making a stew of movies.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah. I like you mentioned, I like how you mentioned the telephone game. It kind of reminds me of a game that I've played with students before, where one student grabs a slip of paper and starts the story, passes it to the student behind him. The student continues that story, passes it to the next student. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Like it's like that's what they did with the script. Is that what a Mad Lib is, or is that something different? It's like they Mad Lib.
Mad Lib is. It's funny. I've heard that Home Alone 2 is pretty much the equivalent of Mad Libs, where Home Alone 2 pretty much took the template and the script for the first one and just changed it. So instead of a house, it's now New York City. Instead of the creepy old man, it's now a creepy old homeless woman with birds on her. You know what I mean?
Got it.
So that's Mad Libs. Well, you mentioned Eric Roberts. I wanted to get to there real quick. We get some interesting cameos that pop up in here. Eric Roberts, like you said, shows up as the CEO of Pet Tech, who joins his employees on this retreat, proving once again that Eric Roberts will show up for anything as long as the money's right. I know you're a fan of Danny Trejo, but Danny Trejo is the same as well. I think if there's a check with enough zeros,
exactly. But that's what I'm saying. The cast of this would make you think that it had a bigger budget.
Well, and I'm convinced that when Eric Roberts showed up on set, I'm convinced that he ad-libbed a good portion of this, because he gets 2 lines of dialogue in this film that I admit are kind of funny, but I'm convinced were ad-libbed. Okay, so there's one scene where he shouts, "Okay, let's get drunk," and I'm almost for certain that was ad-libbed.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that was his deal. He's like, "I'll show up for a half a day, and I'm gonna do whatever I want," and that's the deal.
Yeah, And there is another scene. Okay, and I'm convinced that this was ad-libbing. But there's a scene where they're all playing board games for whatever reason. I didn't understand this part either. This is that script element that I think was written by one of the students that was thrown into the stew. But they're all playing board games for whatever reason, and Dolph is like ultra competitive. He's wearing a bandana, and he's just being competitive about playing like kid games. Like I think that was one of the games was Mousetrap. And then Eric Roberts, as they're doing this, he pokes his head in and he goes, "This is so stupid." And you're kind of thinking to yourself, yes, Eric Roberts, it is, isn't it? But you got paid for this.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, the fact that there were so many, I mean, we didn't need the CEO at all. We didn't need the Keith David character, the bartender.
Whose name
that was
is,
another scene.
Yeah, well,
the
sorry to
wise
interrupt
bartender.
You, but yeah. His name is the wise bartender. They didn't even give him a name.
You did a great job.
What can you tell us about making this film?
I had a job, and therein was some fun. But because I get to be sort of the voice of reason, and so there's a pivotal point which my character turns the plot, and that I love that. because it's an important message about home and family and holidays. It's Christmas.
So are you saying in real life you're not always the voice of reason, or?
In real life? Are you kidding? I try, but I'm really not always the voice of reason.
Yeah. But, I mean, that scene was completely unnecessary as well.
No.
I mean, why did they... Because they had to pay all these people. It seems like... I'm just baffled by... I mean, in Malcolm McDowell, while I'm not super familiar with him, a British... He's like been in some like really legit movies, too. I mean, so... I don't know. I'm just baffled by the cast being so large and so familiar to us with a small budget. I don't get it. I need someone to explain that to me. Can you explain this to me?
I don't have the answer to that. I'd like to think that I feel like, okay, Dolph, while he is known for being an action guy, I think like many actors, they look at new roles and think to themselves, wow, like I haven't done this before. This could be fun. And I think that's what all actors like to do. They all like to kind of stretch themselves and try something new. So I'd like to think that when this script came across Mr. Lundgren's desk, he looked at it and he thought to himself, well, this is something new. Like this is something that I could have fun with. And he is having fun. I mean, I will say right now, my absolute favorite scene in this movie, and I feel like if anybody who's curious about this movie, I feel like they should just watch this one scene and then you'll get enough. Okay. But it's the dinner scene at the ski lodge. Okay. This particular scene, I don't know how you felt about it, but this was Dolph's moment here. I mean, he is dominating this scene. Okay. It's basically, they're all sitting down at the table at the ski lodge, okay, and the CEO Bill comes in. This is Eric Roberts here, and Dolph is sucking up to him. He painted a painting of him, and he purposely, makes everybody move down so that he can sit next to Bill. And I mean, this scene is, I would almost go as far as saying it's magic, because I've never seen Dolph act this goofy before. But in this particular moment here, he is belittling everyone else at the table. Okay, while he's sucking up to Eric Roberts. And he gets a moment, actually my laugh out loud moment of the movie was he trips, I don't know if you remember this or not, but he trips one of the employees, and then in a awesome delivery, he just states to the guy, he goes, "Come on, man, get up, you're goddamn embarrassing." And just the way just the way Dolph delivered that line, that right there was a moment where I was kind of like, okay, it doesn't get a pass, but I do like this 5 minutes here.
Yeah, I mean, there are good things. Like I said, it wasn't nearly as I was expecting it to be way worse. And I will say, from Dolph's perspective, like you said, if this comes across his desk, then the premise seems interesting. The name alone, Pups Alone, it's like a dog's version of Home Alone, and it's a kid's a comedy. And at that time, there were a lot of these action stars at that time were kind of dipping their toe in, like doing kid movies. Like The Rock was doing a bunch of, Disney-esque comedy movies with kids. And there are probably plenty of others. And like Kindergarten Cop is probably one of my favorite Arnold movies. And so he's like, well, I don't have, I can see this being a big draw for him. But I think there was a lot of potential with it, and it just went awry in several places. And I don't know much about movie making. I don't know how this came. The wheels came off of this bus somehow.
That's an excellent metaphor there. Yeah, I mean the wheels came off the bus and they never got put back on correctly, did they? Well, I just wanted to look real quick, talk about the final moments of the film with you. First of all, so the final scenes of this film, in the final act, this is after the thieves, get humiliated by all of the animals. Dolph, so the Victor character and everybody meets back up at Robert's home, and Dolph has a gun pointed at a dog's head way longer than needed to be comfortable for a family film. I thought that was kind of weird.
Well, that's the moment that I kept thinking in my head, like, this is the moment the bulldog should come in and save the day, but he doesn't. And then yes, a minute later, the people come home and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so the moment for me, okay, I don't know about you, but the moment for me where, I think the film went out the window about, an hour leading up to this moment here that we're talking about. So Dolph eventually, his Victor character does get arrested for everything that he's done, because we haven't talked about it, but he's extremely creepy and almost kind of lecherous with some of the female employees on this retreat. But he does get arrested, but not before he runs after Charlie. So Charlie, okay, the dog voiced by Jerry O'Connell, he happens to have the translator prototype, and so in what I'm assuming was supposed to be a scene of hilarity, okay, the dog runs through one of the inventions, which is I guess it's a washing machine for dogs. It's a self, basically a machine where I guess a dog is supposed to go through it and it's going to clean and wash that dog. Here is where the budget restraints are pretty evident here, because it's basically just one of those kiddie jungle gym tubes. You know what I mean? My kids used to have one. It's one of those kind that you can collapse and then, right? And so you watch it and, okay, Dolph is crawling through this thing. I don't know about you, but I was watching it. I'm thinking to myself, Dolph could have easily just walked around it. Okay, no problem. And met Charlie on the other end. Yet I guess they're assuming for comedic purposes, he forces him through this thing as well. And you can tell that Dolph is uncomfortable crawling through this thing. I mean, I guess, okay. I feel so stupid right now. I shouldn't even be doing this. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, if it was like an industrial type washing machine, then I can see a regular, rational, thinking human being walking through it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think it was supposed to be, wouldn't it be so humorous if this big man tries to crawl through this tiny pet tunnel? Ha ha ha.
And it's not. It's not. You can tell that Dolph is uncomfortable. I mean, he's sprayed, he's blow dried. I mean, and it's so, I mean, the scene goes on way too long. This is all done before he gets electrocuted. I mean, and again, Dolph is trying here, but man, is it, it's kind of a chore to watch, because it doesn't make any sense narratively. And I realize to you and to all the listeners, you're probably thinking, well, Sean, there's not much sense finding purpose and purpose and narration behind a movie called Pups Alone, but I don't think it's too much to be asking for just something simple like that.
Yeah, it was overcomplicated. The ending to me was sort of it reminded me of those infomercials that are but wait, there's more. It was so for me, I was expecting the bulldog to come in and save the day when Charlie was cornered. That didn't happen. The people come home. But then the broken prototype ends up working via this magical tunnel thing. So now the bulldog comes in, who is, what's his name? Vinny, voiced by Danny Trejo, is Victor's dog. And he sort of convinces him to be better, and it's sweet. And and then I thought, that's a pro for the movie. That's better. That's a better place for the bulldog to come in. But it was sort of but wait, there's more moment. And then it goes on and on. It was it had 4 endings. And then there are these cops that come in. They're, again, too many people. There were these 2 detectives, I guess. They were non-uniformed policemen that arrest him. And boy, what an odd choice for the detectives. Where did they get those dudes from? It's hard to explain to the list. It was one of them was
I thought that too.
Haired, what? Why did they need to be a part of this at all? And because then there's a uniformed policeman escorting him to the police car. It's hard for me. I can't even remember exactly, but I just remember thinking, I mean, it's like, did you just go next door to the laundromat and pick these two guys up, or
I
what?
think I was wondering the same thing. Yeah, one of the detectives is like this. He's like this overweight, doughy guy. Which, I mean, look, it's totally fine if that's how someone is. But he has like long, slicked back hair, and he's like unshaven with a bit of a goatee. And it's like, okay, maybe if you were looking for like a character to play like a mobster or something like that, fine. But I thought the same thing. It was like, man, did they just go outside and say, hey, do you want to be in a movie? And, you know what I mean? I thought the same thing.
I don't know. It was like somebody involved in this movie was like, I want every character to have this immense backstory and blah, blah, blah. Like I said, I mean, really, there is not a single element of this movie that didn't feel like it was crammed with too much.
And were you like me? Were you a little surprised that it didn't end with that that animated sequence or whatever? I was convinced. I thought it was just so odd that for the first 15 minutes of this film, it's going to have all of those various animated still sequences. And then I was convinced that it was going to end in the same way to kind of provide a bit of a bookend. But no, instead, it should have. Instead, we get this close up of like a CGI snowflake that's falling down. Because again, it's Christmas. That's fine. But I just thought that was kind of odd as well. I was kind of like, back to the lab. Why don't you guys edit this some more? Okay.
Yeah. Well, and then it's like the love interest, this Holly person who Robert. So Holly is one of the people who works at this corporation and is the neighbor who has the identical female version of Charlie, Gidget, voiced by Jennifer Love Hewitt. And so that's where the 101 Dalmatians comes in. It's like, okay, now they're both like happily ever after, literally like a day after they met, like spending Christmas together, and like the two dogs and Holly and Robert together. And it was just like, of course. Again, 4 endings they had to this movie.
Well, okay, so we're at the end. Okay, again, Katie, I got to give you a huge thank you. Thank you so much for. I mean, man, what as I said to you earlier, but you really jumped a grenade. I mean, you jumped not even a grenade. I mean, shoot, it was the equivalent to that bomb that Rambo dropped in Rambo 4. Remember that leveled the entire forest. You did that here for me today, so thank you.
Oh, no. Now, granted, this is not my cup of tea, but that's okay. It's Christmas time. Dolph Lundgren, Danny Trejo, dogs. It's all good.
Yeah. So, okay, here's the recommend. So I'm curious. I like to do 2 recommends. Okay. And I could probably guess where you're going to be on one of those recommends, but I like to do 2 recommends. Okay. One as a Dolph Lundgren vehicle, and then the other as a film in general. So where does this one stand for you? Is this one that is that you'd recommend to others to watch in preparation for the holiday season?
No. Well, no. Here's what I would say about it. Okay. I think that like sweet, innocent, elderly, like grandmas and maybe like 3-year-olds would like put it on, and you're busy doing something else. Keep them busy for 2 hours. But otherwise, no. Like, I would have never watched this, but this is not I'm not the audience for this, but I do feel like it's so silly and all over the place. And there's some familiarity that elderly people and toddlers, that's my recommend.
Now, what about Lundgren though? I mean, as someone who is a huge fan of the Rocky movies, I mean, did this put him in a new light for you at all?
I feel neutral about him because I already have a high opinion. I already have a high opinion of Dolph Lundgren anyway. I'm a big fan. I will say it for me was an experience to see him do something so silly and so outside of what we ordinarily get from him. So that was a delight. But I'm not even sure if you're a big Dolph Lundgren fan, if I would recommend watching the movie. I mean, I don't know. I would say look up some of the clips, watch some of the clips. You know what I mean? I don't know. Do you feel differently?
That's exactly what I was going to say in so many words. I honestly think for my recommend, I think if someone can edit this and package all of Dolph's scenes, okay, together, then I think you certainly have a really strange oddity to watch. I mean, I tried looking for it. Unfortunately, the dinner scene is not available on YouTube yet, but I encourage, if anyone's going to watch it, I think the dinner scene is the standout moment, and that's certainly saying something. That's much better than the final assault where Dolph is crawling through the tube. We already talked about that. I think Dolph's contributions and moments in this film are just, I mean, we already talked about it. They're so off the wall, they're bizarre, but ultimately fun. I think it's everything else in this movie that is ultimately lacking. I mean, it's way too long with scenes that just drag on. We have characters who are just so dumb that it's pointless even watching. And the dogs don't do nearly enough to make it enjoyable on that front. I mean, even my kids, even like I said earlier, my kids were bored and lost interest after a while because I think dogs staring at each other with silly voices is funny for only so long. So I will say, if the idea of seeing Ivan Drago wearing a Christmas sweater with curlers in his hair, and him doing things that is completely subverting your typical expectations of what Dolph can do to a whole other level, I think if that interests you, then I think it is worth watching for his scenes and his scenes alone. Otherwise, I mean, I've never seen nor have I been a big fan of those Hallmark Christmas movies. But as far as I'm concerned, I think this can be tossed aside with all of those other films. However, those films are huge business. Okay, so there is a market for them. I am not within that market. It doesn't sound like you are either. But those are a huge business, and it seems like every year at least 24 are released. So I mean, maybe that's why Saban Films picked this one up and they gave it that small little premiere.
Yeah, that's possible. I agree with your assessment. You said it very well and succinctly. I do have to give Dolph credit for allowing himself to be seen in such an unflattering light. I mean, it was for comedy's sake, but I feel like a lot of similar. Like, I can't picture Jean-Claude Van Damme doing that. You know what I mean? Like, allowing himself to, be the butt of jokes and wear curlers in his hair and silly outfits. And, I do have to give him credit for putting his ego aside and, branching out. And it is too bad that the rest of the movie didn't live up to what he was probably hoping it would be.
No, you brought up an excellent point. I couldn't imagine Jean-Claude Van Damme doing this. I couldn't imagine Steven Seagal doing this. You know what I mean? Any of those other guys. So yeah, I think that's an excellent way of putting it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, this one's crossed off the list. I, done deal. I watched the Christmas movie this season.
Well, before I let you go, I'd like you to give a shout out. Is there anything that you're working on, or any podcasts, any movies that you've seen, anything that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Oh, goodness. I'd recently covered Ray Donovan. There was a Thanksgiving episode on the Jacked Up Review podcast. So that was fun. There was a panel of 4 of us that covered that series. So if anyone is a fan of that, check out the Jacked Up Review Show podcast. And there's a Thanksgiving episode on Ray Donovan. Otherwise, my ordinary, delightful voice can be seen and heard with the One More Round podcast. It's a Rocky series podcast, obviously, and we are on season 2 now. So each movie is a season. So we recently finished up with the original Rocky, and we're just a couple episodes in on Rocky 2. So check us out. We're on the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network. And I'm lucky to join Ryan Rebalkin and Kyle Peterson on that show.
Well, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me for this one. Like I said, I know it wasn't at the top of your list, but I had a really good time chatting it with you. So thank you. And I do hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I also hope that you are able to check out some other films, preferably ones with Mr. Lundgren, that are better than this one, because they're out there. Okay, they're out there. But thank you again.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and you have a Merry Christmas too.
All right. To everyone out there who is listening, please feel free to rate and review the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever else you go to subscribe. We always appreciate the reviews. And have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you all next time on I Must Break This Podcast.